For the last 2 weeks of school, we are going to spend some time talking about and reading some stories about a new author. And the author's name is Bill Peet. And Bill Peet actually wrote and did the illustrations or the drawings for his books. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about Bill Peet. So it says Bill Peet was an artist. He combined excellent storytelling, which means he loved to write great stories, with wonderful and enduring illustrations, and he has become one of the most popular children's literature writers and illustrators of all time. He went to art school in Indianapolis, and then when he graduated, he went and drew pictures and characters for Walt Disney World. And so some of his work is actually seen in some movies called Fantasia, 101 Dalmatians, and Peter Pan. In 1959, Bill Peet published his first book called Hubert's Hair-Raising Adventure. And so since then, he wrote and illustrated many other books. The first one we are going to enjoy is called The Caboose Who Got Loose. And it is written and illustrated by Bill Peet. The Caboose Who Got Loose. When Katie Caboose rambled down the train tracks, the engines were steamers with puffing smokestacks. She was a caboose who disliked being last. With an endless black cloud of smoke rolling past, "It's not only too smoky," the caboose would complain. "There's the jerks and the jolts of this noisy freight train." The engine up front always wore a big smile. As he lumbered along for mile after mile, he was proud of his being so powerful and strong that he could haul a freight train 100 cars long. So he went chugging, no worry or care, leaving Katie Caboose in dark clouds of despair. Can you see the smile on the engine? See how the artist put a few eyes and the nose and what looks to be the mouth. Katie had little hope that she would ever get loose, or ever be anything but a caboose. "I can wish," sighed poor Katie. "What else can I do? If you wish hard enough, then your wish might come true." Often Katie would wish that she someday could be something quiet and simple, like a lovely elm tree, or a ramshackle barn all alone on a hill, where the noisiest thing was a squeaky windmill. It might become lonely, she thought, way out there, but at least there's a view with a lot of fresh air. Whenever she passed through a small country town, Katie wished she could stop and just settle down and be one of the houses who sat in a row on a tree-shaded street, have no place to go. "It's so restful," thought Katie, "where one can relax," as she hurried and scurried on down the train tracks. What she wished most to be, much more than the rest, was a cabin she'd seen on her trips through the West. A little log shack hut covered with vines, perched on a slope in a forest of pines. How perfect, thought Katie as she hurried on by it, to live there in the trees where it's peaceful and quiet. But all the caboose could look forward to was a deep rocky canyon the train traveled through. Where huge boulders leaned way over the tracks in towering, top-heavy, gigantic stacks. What is holding them up? Frightened Katy would wonder, as the earth-shaking train went rumbling right under. If one should come loose and fall down upon her, it would squash Katy flat, and then she'd be a goner. If she didn't get squashed, there was more to be dreaded, up the winding steep grades where the engine was headed. High up in the mountains were terrible ledges, where the track ran along only feet from the edges. The view was breathtaking, but after one look, it was so upsetting, she shivered and shook. If she slipped off the track, then down she would go, to be smashed into bits on the rocks far below. Then poor Katy received more of a fright from a smoke-blackened tunnel as dark as the night, and she crept through the tunnel with a horrible thought that far back in the darkness she'd suddenly be caught by caboose-eating monsters who lurked all about. They would gobble her up before she got out. Her trips always ended near a city somewhere, way out in a freight yard with smoke clouding the air, where a turmoil of trains made a great noisy rumble on crisscrossing tracks, an impossible jumble. The train came to a stop and the cars were unhitched. Then off to a side track the caboose was soon switched, where Katy could sit and take in the fine scenery, with such lovely sights as a load of machinery. Coal cars and flat cars, lumber stacked on their backs, squealing carloads of pigs with snouts poking through cracks. They always left Katy in the midst of it all, while the engine received a complete overhaul. The huge engine at last had run down from the strain, from the 10,000 miles he had hauled the long train. Back in the roundhouse men swarmed all about, to check over and under him, inside and out, replacing old pistons and bolts that were missing, patching leaks in the boiler that made a loud hissing, cleaning rust from his piping that ran everywhere, checking steam valves and pumps in great need of repair. As Katy sat there through one long dreary night, staring up through the smoke at a red signal light, a small house appeared in the sky like a ghost, a shack of the switchman perched high on a post. "I'd like to be you," said the shack very sadly. "If I could trade places, I would very gladly. A caboose is what I've always wanted to be, for you have the best life from what I can see." Can you see the shack? This is the sad little shack who wishes he could be just like the caboose. Before Katy could think of some way to reply, all at once a long freight train came thundering by. The next thing she knew, she was jerked and then jolted, then hitched to the train with her coupler bolted. As the train left the freight yard, poor Katy looked back to catch a last glimpse of the sad little shack. From now on, Katy promised, I shall never complain. I'll be a happy caboose at the end of a train, and put up with the jolts, the train noise, and the rest, all the smoke that rolls by, or at least try my best. With her new point of view, she enjoyed the long ride. It was fun on a trip through the broad countryside. Look how Katie Caboose's face has changed. What do you notice is different? But when the train crept up a steep mountain grade, then poor Katie found that she was still afraid. And once more she began to quiver and shiver and shake at the thought of the frightening curves that she must take. Her unsteady wheels could cause her to slip, which would suddenly put a quick end to the trip. It was a hot afternoon, so the going was rough, and the engine up front was in a puffing big huff. He groaned, "What a day to chug up such a grade on a bare mountain side without one bit of shade." When he came steaming over the very last hump, he lunged with a fury that made the cars jump, all the way back to Katie, who got such a jolt that it snapped off a rusty old coupling bolt. She was free of the train. At last she was loose, and away down the track went Katie Caboose. On down the grade she flew faster and faster, straight for a curve and certain disaster. When Katie hit the curve, she took off like a kite, high over the treetops on her first and last flight. That would quickly have ended poor Katie Caboose if it hadn't been for two towering spruce. The caboose became caught in a very tight squeeze between the two tall trunks of two evergreen trees. At first she could hardly believe her good luck. What a wonderful place it was to be stuck. She thought sure she was dreaming. It couldn't be true. Here she was in the trees with a beautiful view. "It's so perfect," sighed Katie, "yet I'm really not free. I know sooner or later they will come after me." And then sure enough, up the mountains that night came a train with a crane and a powerful light. "She couldn't have gone leaping off here," came a shout. Like a great glaring eye, then the light searched about. It flashed past the trees down the steep rocky bluff, and it searched high and low, but not quite high enough. Can you see Katie in the trees? And the light is not able to detect her. Or it would have soon spotted the missing caboose, but all they could find was a startled bull moose. "Let's all call it quits," growled the boss of the crew. "For all that I care, she's in Kalamazoo." So Katie stayed in the treetops. No one ever found her, except for the squirrels and the birds all around her. At last she was free, just as free as the breeze, and how Katie did love it up there in the trees. And indeed, oh indeed, oh indeed, Katie did. Boys and girls, in your composition and sketchbooks, I would love to see a picture of Katie the caboose. She would actually be fairly easy for you to draw. Whether you draw her in the trees or you draw her on a train track, it doesn't really matter. You can pick whatever is your favorite part from our story. But you can see that Bill Pete gave Katie a red color. She is made of several shapes. You can see there are rectangles for the body, rectangles for the eyes, a yellow circle nose, and some circle wheels. So be sure to add some of those details and use at least 4 colors in your composition and sketchbook. And try to use extraordinary detail so that you can work on all of your illustrating skills and try to draw Katie the caboose. I hope you enjoyed our first Bill Pete story and that you look forward to several more. Have a great day and enjoy illustrating. Bye-bye.